2014 Buick Encore with the 1.4 liter Ecotec motor, timing chain tensioner problems, and oil burning problems related to piston rings getting gunked up. Well-known problem with these. Just get a Honda to avoid all these problems, right? Right? Wait a minute, all those problems are from a Honda. Behind me is a 2014 Buick Encore with the 1.4 liter Ecotec motor. Now, of course, this doesn't have the problems that I just listed widespread like the Honda Accord video that I just posted. However, this has its own problems. This doesn't mean that this will escape all of the problems that you see. However, thanks to social media and all of the algorithm-fed content, we have all been taught that American cars are junk. All of them. And Hondas and Toyotas will save the world. You will never, ever have a problem if you buy a Honda or Toyota. That is false. And today we're going to be breaking that down. Now bear with me here. I'm not here to tell you that everything is junk or everything is perfect. This vehicle isn't too bad, but it has its own problems. What I like to do in this channel is to walk you through and help you understand exactly what you're getting into. You see, look, this is a car review. The auto market has changed. People are looking at used cars more, and people need to know what's really going on. The exterior of the vehicle is nice. I'm not a big fan of the design. In fact, I'm not a big fan of crossovers in general. However, I have been warming up, and the Buick doesn't give me the same type of vibes that some of their older vehicles did.
The 2014 Buick Encore is small on paper, but somehow still manages to look upscale without trying too hard. This Buick Encore is finished in a clean gray metallic, or as Buick calls it, quicksilver metallic. This Encore looks sharp without showing off. It's one of those colors that hides dust, shows the body lines, and somehow still looks expensive. The chrome, the headlights, the trim, everything just seems to click just right. It's simple, it's classy, and 10 years later it still looks just right. If you look closely at the headlights, you'll notice a bit of blue in the projector housing. And no, it's not aftermarket. That subtle blue hue is actually part of the lens coating used on the projector. It's there to enhance the light output and reduce glare by filtering the way the light refracts through the lens. It's Buick's way of adding a premium touch. That little blue tint gives off the illusion of modern high-end lighting, even though these are just standard halogens doing their best impression of luxury. So if you thought someone added cheap aftermarket bulbs, nope, that's just straight from the factory. Up front, you get the classic Buick waterfall grille. It gives the Encore that mini enclave vibe. The projector headlights are neatly tucked in, and the chrome accents are everywhere because, of course, it's a Buick. Along the sides, these short overhangs and tall stance give it a bit of SUV confidence, even though it's really more of a tall hatchback. The 18-inch wheels fit the arches just right, and the body lines keep it from looking like every other blob-shaped crossover from the early 2010s. Around the back, the proportions are tight. It's rounded, almost cute, but still grown up. The taillights wrap cleanly into the hatch, and even the roof rails add a bit of adventure flair that you'll probably never use. Overall, it's the kind of design that's aged better than anyone's expected. Modern enough to still look relevant, and refined enough to make you forget it shares a platform with the Chevy Trax.
This is the nicer version of the Chevy Trax. It has more nice features, a nice padded dashboard. You have some faux wood trim. GM doesn't really do real wood trim like Lexus does. You have a nice leather steering wheel, and you have just generally nice interior overall. It feels pretty good when you drive it. It's very comfortable. It does soak up bumps relatively nicely. It's a crossover, so it's not going to ride like a luxury car, but not bad. It's not bad at all. This does what you need. You have a whole bunch of features here. You have a physical parking brake. I really cannot stand the electronic parking brakes. It makes it harder for a DIYer. All the cruise control buttons are on the steering wheel. You have your phone. Everything is connected. Your volume buttons, perfect spot. You have intermittent wipers, a rear wiper as well. This has a power driver's seat. To recline, however, isn't a power function, but works for me. Visors are standard. This has a sunroof. The back seat is very comfortable. These are partial leather, or not leather, but like vinyl. Kind of like the vinyl material, which I like. It's very easy to clean. It's got cloth in the middle. Obviously, there are different options for this car. And it does have the center armrest and two more cup holders back here. Really nice. It's got a 120 volt plug. You can actually plug a household item into this 120 volt plug. You don't see that in a lot of cars, especially something that you can get for well under $10,000. You know, the back seat is simple, but they didn't skimp on some of the nice materials back here. The door panels back here are soft touch all the way on the top, just like the front door panels. This is a Buick. It is not an entry level. It is the nicer version. I'm pretty sure the Trax does not have a nicer back seat like this, but for the price that you get and what you get, very good. To start off, the 1.4 liter Ecotec motor in the Buick Encore is pretty similar to the Chevy Cruze in some of the other GM vehicles. You can see the differences here are very minor. The Chevy Trax is going to be exactly the same, and there are a lot of pros to this engine. Yes, believe it or not, I know everybody wants to say GM is garbage, but there are pros to this engine.
Under the hood is GM's 1.4 liter Ecotec motor. It's a compact little workhorse that's better than it gets credit for. This engine is port-injected, not direct-injected, which means you won't be dealing with carbon buildup on the valves every 100,000 miles or so. It's also timing chain driven, and unlike some of GM's older setups, has proven to be reliable. No major tension or chain stretch issues to worry about. The 1.4 uses a cast iron block with an aluminum head. The turbocharged versions found in the Buick Encore and the Chevy Trax add a bit of punch without sacrificing longevity. If you stay on top of the oil changes and the repairs, this engine can last a very long time. It's not known for serious oil consumption or head gasket problems, and it's fairly forgiving when it comes to maintenance costs. Spark plugs and the large ignition coil on top are very easy to reach, and overall it's one of the simpler small turbo engines to live with. It may not be fast, but it's smooth, efficient, and proven. A well-engineered little engine that's earned its spot in a ton of GM's compact cars and crossovers.
Another pro is the engine mounts on these cars don't fail as often. These are very simple. They're not hydraulic. They're very easy to replace, and you don't have a lot of problems related to the engine mounts. While the engine is low down in the engine bay, a lot of the stuff is easy to get to. Even the intake manifold replacement is not the worst thing in the world. In fact, I found it relatively simple. I do have a DIY guide as well, and I have some links in the description if you need to replace some parts. I earn a commission from these, so I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. You can check the links below. There are some parts that you may need and some things that may interest you for this car. These engines can last a long time with some maintenance, but they can last a long time. But for all of the positive remarks that I have giveth, I shall taketh some away, starting with the PCV system. If you've had one of these cars, you've dealt with it. The intake manifold and the valve cover fail together. Now, actually, the valve cover tends to fail because the check valve in the intake manifold falls off. That check valve is designed to prevent boost from entering the crankcase, causing problems. If you feel air coming from this right here, you have a problem. You're gonna have to replace your intake manifold and your valve cover. Dorman, which is linked below, does have an intake manifold that offers a solution for this problem, so that's a plus. There are other kits like these as well that you can check out. These are custom kits that owners have reported to be a long-term or permanent solution. They just require slight modification. But that's a problem that you're gonna have to deal with. Make sure to check out the videos on my channel to see how to fix that. Another thing you're gonna deal with is the ignition coil. This ignition coil is one ignition coil pack. There's not four of them. It has 4 in one. The unit tends to fail. You'll get misfires and you'll get some misfire codes. Very easy to replace. It's not a big deal, but it can be frustrating. Another problem with these engines is the cooling system. They're like BMWs. Everything is plastic and everything breaks. Coolant neck down here and the coolant neck over here, you'll see some leaks from those. If you haven't, you will at some point. That brings me to another thing. There are some head gasket reported failures for these engines, but it does not seem to be a design-related problem. It seems to be more of a problem with the weak cooling system again, because they leak coolant and the plastic housings don't last very long. Some of these engines get overheated and head gaskets can fail because of that. And that creates a problem for buying one of these used. You're gonna have to check these cooling systems to make sure that the head gasket is fine and it wasn't overheated and it was cared for. With most of these, you'll learn that the intake manifold and the valve cover will have all been replaced at this point. The last thing, which will frustrate people, but this is one modern car problem that you'll deal with, is the turbocharger failure. The turbochargers on these cars have been known to fail. Bad bearings can cause the compressor wheel to start making noises and you'll have problems with it spinning. You'll get boost codes and codes related to that. The turbocharger will have to be replaced. Fortunately, it is up front, but it is more of an involved job. If you have a lot of rust, you live in a rust belt, you may have some problems removing the bolts. They tend to break. Just get heat on those bolts before you remove them. If you're paying labor, it's going to be a little pricey to get that turbo replaced. The actual turbo, you can get a Garrett or original equipment turbo for $500 to $800 or so, depending on where you're looking, and you can find aftermarket ones for cheaper, but pick your poison. If you're doing it yourself, you can get it fixed for a very reasonable price, especially considering what new cars cost to repair. As far as common problems with this engine, that's it. If you can stay on top of these things, this engine can go for a long time, but you will have to monitor those coolant necks and make sure you don't run it low on coolant. Make sure to keep an eye on that. That's a big thing with these cars. The transmission is the 6T40 transmission. It's a 6-speed automatic transmission that has been around for a long time. It's used in the Chevy Cruze, this Buick Encore, the Chevy Trax, and many other Chevy vehicles. So they've been using it for a long time and they've made a lot of revisions to this transmission.
Now, this 2014 Buick Encore uses GM's 6T40 automatic 6-speed transmission that found its way into everything from the Cruze to the Malibu to the Equinox. Now, early versions of this transmission from 08 to about 2012, or the first generation, had a reputation for self-destructing in a dramatic fashion. A thin 3.5 in reverse clutch wave plate liked to crack, leaving owners with no reverse, no third, and no hope. By 2013, GM finally wised up. The wave plate was redesigned with thicker steel and the valve body hydraulics were recalibrated for smoother clutch apply. In other words, it stopped trying to blow up after about 80,000 miles. The transmission in the 2014 Encore is what rebuilders called a Gen 1.5 unit. That's not the official name that GM gave it or designated to it, but that's what we're going to be calling it because it had major updates to prevent these type of failures. Again, which is good news for Buick Encore and Chevy Trax owners. Not the brand new Gen 2 yet, but it's miles ahead of their original. The updated drum, the seals, the revised solenoids fix a lot of the mechanical drama. That said, it's not perfect. The units can still develop torque converter shutter or TCC shutter or lazy shifting if the fluid is neglected. Basically, you should probably change it every 40 to 60,000 miles, what I would personally recommend. Sonax offers a torque converter clutch regulator valve kit, which can make it bulletproof if you happen to unfortunately rebuild this transmission, so there is a silver lining if you run into problems, but for the most part, this transmission wasn't the worst. It's pretty good if you take care of it. This is kind of like the midlife version of the 6T40. It's not flawless, but it's not necessarily the transmission horror story that it started out as. The second generation 6T40, which improved upon the TCC shutter and the valve body wear, came around for the 2015 and newer Buick Encore and Chevy Trax model. Though all of the Encores from 2013 and newer did not have the catastrophic 3.5R wave plate problem. That problem was from previous generation 6T40. So these transmissions are not that bad. It is recommended to just keep up with the fluid changes. That's a big one. In almost every video, it seems to be the same exact thing. Change your transmission fluid, because we all remember to change our engine oil, not our transmission fluid, and many people pay quite dearly for that. Though most of that paying dearly for it would be in labor, because the cost of the transmission isn't as bad as you would think it would be, which is sort of an indication of a low demand for people needing to replace these transmissions. In other words, it's not high. They don't fail often, which is good news. The suspension for the front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles are pretty straightforward. There isn't anything too unusual besides regular wear and tear. The all-wheel drive models, however, do require all 4 tires to be within 2/32 tread depth. This is not one of those vehicles that you can run different brand tires or different tread depth tires or brand new tire and halfway worn down tires. For the all-wheel drive units, all the tires do need to be pretty close in tread depth. I have a tread depth gauge in the description, so if you want to support the channel, I earn a small commission from that. Make sure to check out the description. I appreciate your support. But as for the all-wheel drive system, you're going to want to look for any leaks coming from the rear axle seals or the input shaft seal where the drive shaft connects to. They can leak, which is no big deal. Unless you don't catch it in time, then you'll be replacing the entire rear differential unit. Also, the rear differential control module or the wheel speed sensors can cause problems, which will cause the all-wheel drive off light to illuminate. So make sure to check into that. But the most important thing with the all-wheel drive versions is to keep the tires matched, keep the fluid fresh, or you'll be driving front-wheel drive whether you like it or not. As far as interior goes, there can be some peeling around the chrome trim, which is annoying but not the worst case scenario. And the exterior is not so bad unless you have the blue Encore. The blue Encore is just so well known for peeling and flaking. It's something that honestly I would just be very wary of when you're looking at these cars, because that's something that was very well documented.
Let's get to the test drive. Even a little bit of throttle input, once that turbo spools up, you'll feel that car really kind of pushing. This is kind of like the early crossovers. This is when crossovers were really starting to make their way into the market, and Buick released this. This was the nicer version of the Chevy Trax, and it is nicer actually. It has fake wood trim, but it looks good. The black wood trim is very modern. The dash panels are padded. The interior feels nice, got the leather steering wheel, and even after 10 plus years, it feels good. The seats are comfortable, it sits up high, the power and the torque feel great, the power band feels good. You don't really have to floor it to get a little bit of power out of it. Okay, I got half throttle, full. There's not much of a difference. This is very typical of a small turbocharged engine. Once you really get your foot into it, especially if you're trying to accelerate like I was doing just now, it doesn't have much more push. With these type of cars, you're not looking for that much more. Honestly, I do like and totally understand why manufacturers did the half throttle input. They built these engines around that. Give it a little bit of throttle and the turbo spools up and you're going. You don't really have to put your foot down on the accelerator pedal to really get the car moving. I've been driving this car now for about 20 minutes and it feels like I'm at home. You ever had that moment where you rent a car and it feels like this is not the car that I'm used to driving? I don't feel that in this car. That's a big plus. 22 minutes of driving the Encore and I am fully comfortable. I feel at home in the Buick Encore. This car is easy to drive. It's very easy to drive. These are very low cost. I don't know how the auto industry is going to do in the next decade, but I have a feeling that this expensive, ridiculously overpriced new car nonsense will come to a big grinding halt. I don't know how or when, but it looks like we're already seeing it.
And so that makes the Buick Encore. Right off the bat, you see the score here. The engine is going to get a 5.5. The engine core is good. The long block is built well. The problem is not the long block. The problem is everything that surrounds it, primarily the cooling system. These are leaky engines. The plastic housings suck. They just... This is probably a reason why a lot of these engines fail. If you own one of these engines, you can keep them running for a long time, but you really got to stay on top of that. There are companies that make metal housings, though I don't know if it's the actual plastic versus metal. The one that I worked on leaked, and it didn't leak because the plastic housing cracked. The gasket between them stopped sealing. Could metal have resolved this? Maybe. If you have one of these cars with metal cooling necks, let me know. I'm kind of curious about that. Then there are the turbocharger problems that come with this, and the PCV system requiring the intake manifold and valve cover replacement. That's not the worst job out there, and if you have to hire a mechanic, yes, it's going to cost you a bunch of money. Shops cost a lot no matter what, but it's not a hard job to do. I actually have a DIY. If you're curious, it's in the description below. You can do it. It's a DIY-able job. The hardest part is leaning over the car. The big frustrating part is that this is a very well-known problem. I would even go out on a whim and say all of these engines have needed this. Most owners seem to have positive luck with the Dorman manifold setup. There are other PCV fix kits like Cruise Kits. They do sell PCV fix kits that a lot of owners call a permanent long-term repair. It does require very slight modification for owners that don't mind getting their hands dirty, but it's something to look into as well. The cooling system also played a big role in the 5.5 score as well, because the engines failed because of low coolant and people driving them because of that. It really took a toll on the reputation of this engine, even though it's a good engine. The transmission gets a 6.5. GM calls this fluid lifetime, except under severe duty conditions. Then they say to change it at 40,000. What? Just change the fluid at 40 to 60,000 miles. Forget about all that stuff. I take away from these scores because of the lifetime fluid situation. Toyota does it too. Volkswagen does it too. A lot of manufacturers do this, so they all get dinged in this area. However, GM kind of does it, but then they say you should change it. Just change your transmission fluid. The transmissions were revised. The older models had the 3.5 reversed wave plate
failures, these ones for the Encores and Trax got the updated or the 1.5 generation that corrected the wave plate problems. They still had TCC shutter problems, and there were still problems with the valve body, harsh 1 to 2, shifts 3 to 4 as well. But as far as outright failures, no, these transmissions can actually last a long time. Just change your fluid. This is like the theme of this channel here, but a lot of the problems result from not changing fluid. You should be okay with these transmissions long term. So transmission gets a 6.5. Suspension is pretty straightforward. I don't see anything outside of the ordinary. I did give it an 8, and yes, I'm including a drivetrain component here. This is for the all-wheel drive vehicles. For the all-wheel drive components, the rear differentials were known to leak some. Of course, if you don't repair it, it can be an outright rear differential failure, which is expensive. This is something that's preventable. You got to get under your car and inspect it. But there are some known problems with wheel speed sensors and things like that. Honestly, I call that part of standard maintenance. And some of the module failures as well do kind of suck. But widespread and major problems, not really. They exist. You just got to stay on top of the maintenance. They seem to be overall pretty good. And so suspension and drivetrain that I'm mixing in here with this one, it's going to get an 8. Repair costs, and is it DIYable? Yes, these engines are not hard to work on, and the turbochargers are, no matter what engine it is, are always going to be somewhat of a pain, especially if you live in the Rust Belt and you deal with rust. The transmission is very low cost, which is a good sign. A lot of the parts are easy to obtain and easy to change. What really knocks this score down a lot is the price of a used engine. If you look at these, they're going for about $1,500 to $2,500. That's pretty expensive for this type of vehicle, and that is somewhat telling that these engines do fail. There's some demand for these engines. I do suspect a lot of failures come from overheating and problems related to ignoring PCV system. Otherwise, it's easy to work on, which is nice. And so I'm going to give this one a 6.5. The interior isn't bad at all. I see some of the chrome plastic trim peeling. That's real common with certain GMs. Honestly, that's not even a big deal. The interior in this vehicle was really nice. It didn't have melting or cracked dashboards or any weird, ridiculous problems that you deal with other brands. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Body and exterior. Oh, man. I don't know where to start here. It depends on the color. Many of the colors were just fine, but blue was the worst. Blue peeled and the paint chipped off and flaked off, and blue is probably the worst color you can have. Even though it's a beautiful color, they just peel and flake, and this one is the gray color, and you know, after 10 years you see some fading. That's not too abnormal. You see the bumper is mismatched. You see some fading on the top spoiler as well, on the plastic components, which is not unusual. There isn't any abnormal paint wear otherwise that I see on these, especially on the metal body. It still looks really good, though it seems to be average to just slightly under average. I'm trying not to be biased here, okay? I'm trying not to be biased. A big part of this is the blue, which is gonna knock the score down a lot. This is such a frustrating thing to deal with. At 5.5 is what it's gonna get. I'm 5.5. Considering interior and body and exterior are half weighted, brings a total score to 6.65. Everybody says they're all junk and they'll never last, and this is the worst engine that ever existed. Whatever. You can make them last, but it does take some diligence. It's not the hardest maintenance to do, but some of it is repeated, and some of these failures seem to happen more than once, and it's pretty annoying. I'm not gonna lie about that, but overall you can't make it last. You just need to stay on top of it. Hey, thanks for checking this video out. I really appreciate everybody watching. This channel is very small, but it is growing. There are several more videos coming this month, and I really can't wait to show you guys what's coming up. Hey, if you're in the Sacramento area and you want me to review your car, send me an email down below. I'd love to review your car. Hey, thanks for checking the channel out. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.